Hey folks, welcome back to our Dice Tower preview. I'm Mark, and today we're taking a look at Meeples and Monsters. Meeples and Monsters is brought to you by AEG. It's for 2 to 4 players, ages 14 and up, and games range anywhere from 45 to 90 minutes. A dark shadow has fallen upon the realm of Rowan. The evil forces of Mordra pulled to the power of Sauron. Together with unfathomable monstrosities from the realm of people, have found ways to enter your world and are now invading everywhere. The king's army, weakened by years of war, is but a thin veneer of its former self. The desperate king turns to you, lords and ladies of the land, asking you to take action and save the realm from the dark powers. Whoever musters the most potent force, completing quests, adventures, and proving most effective against the invaders will be declared the new Earl Marshal and win the game. Each player will seek to build the most effective bag of meeple units in order to complete quests, go on adventures, and defeat monsters. All of these things will gain a player victory points, and the player with the most victory points at the end of the game will be declared the winner. So the main board represents the kingdom. You have several different areas here that you're going to be activating throughout the game. You've got the cathedral, the university, villages, and castle. Now, around the edge of the board is where the monsters are all going to be trying to come in and wreak havoc. But each of the city zones has a spot for buildings where you will be creating new buildings that you can activate throughout the game. Again, your main goal here is to build your bag of meeples. Bring out that force so you can deal with the monsters. The main scoreboard also doubles as the Dark Council. This is where you'll place all the overlords with their henchmen. The overlords also have specific, or random I should say, bonuses if you're able to defeat them. This is all in-game stuff where you'll hopefully bolster your victory points at the end, but these are very tough creatures. You hope to have built up your bag by the time you have to deal with these. And then you're set up the monster deck. The monster deck will have a series of Dark Council cards. Throughout the deck, you have levels 1, 2, and 3 monsters, and each of those areas of the deck will receive one of those Dark Council cards, and as those cards come out, different things will trigger in the game. And you have a series of location tiles or buildings that you're going to be putting out into the different zones. Now, there's a limited number of spots to build in, and once they're filled, those are the different locations that you can visit for that particular game. And obviously there's more tiles here than there are spots, so the games will vary every time. So each player receives a player board, and this is where you're keeping track of your current meeples that are ready to be activated, as well as ones that you've used previously. Now, at the bottom of the board is the different types of meeples and their current level, as you will be able to level them up throughout the game. You've got the mage, you've got clerics, you've got the knight, you've got warriors, and you've got peasants. Yes, you only start with peasants. You get 7 in your bag, as well as 3 corruption. Corruption just dirties up your bag and slows you down in what you're trying to do, and it is ever present throughout the game. Each player also receives 2 quest cards. Now, throughout the game, there's lots of opportunity to get even more quests, and quests are all about getting victory points, but there's also bonuses involved. Now, you have 3 different types. You've got triggered, which is an instant bonus, and you've got ongoing, which will give you a bonus throughout the game, potentially giving you more power for heroes and so forth. But you also have the end of game quests. So you want to keep an eye on all these as you move through the game and make sure you activate them at the appropriate time. Now there's also some special meeples that you can acquire. These are prestige level, and they definitely deliver a big bang for the buck. But you only acquire these via certain locations and quests that you complete. So you've got the ranger, you've got the paladin, and you have the shaman. These are definitely powerful meeples to add to your bag. Now to start the game, you want to make sure that you've drawn 6 monsters and placed them around the edge of the board. Now, each of these monsters will have a color and it'll show where to place them. And you want to make sure that each player has drawn 4 of their meeples from the bag at random and placed them in the tavern. Pretty much ready to go, and there are 3 main phases. You have the development phase, you have the main phase, and then you have the draw phase. So let's take a look at development. So, especially early on, this development phase is really crucial to building out new locations in the different zones. So your first choice here is to either place 2 meeples, or 2 peasants I should say, into the first slot, where you would then place one of the tiles into a zone. And when you do, you get the bonus that it calls for under the for rent sign. Sometimes it's just a standard meeple. It could be a yellow or red, or it's going to allow you to get a couple different ones. Or a quest, you might get to get new quest cards. Generally, you're drawing 2 and keeping 1. Sometimes it'll allow you to thin out the different meeples you have by placing 2 and removing 1 and gaining a new one. So lots of different choices to be made in these different zones. And then as you add the different locations on the for rent spots, you're going to have even more choices as the game goes on. But you do have a choice when it comes to building locations. You can again place the 2 peasants, or you can choose to place a single peasant and gain a new peasant, which then just goes to your discard or your lodging area of your player board. And they work very similar, right? You're still going to build a location, but if you have any colored meeples, any of the heroes in your tavern, then you can choose to place them in the other development slot, which is to level up one of your heroes. Now there's a cost associated with some of these levels, and you must pay that in victory points in order to level them up, but it is well worth it because they will give you abilities and powers and more power to defeat the monsters coming in. So especially early on, if you have those available, then leveling up is crucial. Now, before moving on to the main phase, you'll collect the meeples used in development and put them in your discard or your lodgings area of your board. Now, in this main phase, you're activating different locations. Really, that's one of the big things, as well as fighting monsters, because there's a trade-off here. You're going to need to build out your bag, but you also need to deal with these monsters and gain victory points that way. But the different locations are going to do so many different things, especially depending on the game, because you are going to be building out these for rent spots, which vastly changes up what you can do. And they're going to give you all kinds of abilities and things, but obviously some of the main things you're doing is gaining more meeples or the heroes. So you have the mage, you have the cleric, and you've got the warrior and the knight, all possible meeples that you can gain, and some are going to cost you meeple to get a new one. So really some interesting choices going on. And then as you build out the different for rent areas, again, very different things are going to happen. So one of the ones that I like is when you can tap into the prestige characters, and this is the healer's temple. You're going to play a blue meeple and a red, and in this case you're going to lose the red, but you're going to gain the purple, which is the paladin. Super powerful. Now there's a limited number of paladins that are going to be on this tile, so you hope to get to it quicker before the other players. Another example is the manor house. This is where you're placing a black knight and a white peasant. This allows you to assign a +2 combat value to all your other units that are still located in your tavern. Why is that important? Because you are going after monsters around the edge of the board, give you better combat value for this turn, because you have to meet or beat the monster's power requirement in order to defeat them. Now, monsters are interesting because sometimes you're just going to get victory points for defeating them. Other times, you're going to gain a meeple, or you might gain the ability to draw quest cards. Sometimes it's a permanent ability, a plus power to a specific type of hero, and then you would just slide that under your main player board to show that you have that for future rounds. But there's a lot of different things that can happen with these monsters, and also monsters are very important because they can overrun an area. So if you activate a spot in a zone that's been overrun, you'll see at the top of the monster card on the board, it'll give you a plus white meeple. And I love the thematic nature around this because all the peasants are frightened and they're running for their lives. And so for every location that gets activated in that particular zone, you're going to gain that many meeples because they're running to you, trying to get away and save themselves. So throughout your turn, make sure you keep a watchful eye on your quests, especially the ongoing and triggered possible ones, because those will give you benefits throughout the game if you're able to fulfill them. So you want to keep an eye on them, especially if you've gathered a certain type of monster. If you have the icons it calls for on the monster cards, then you might fulfill that quest. There's lots of different quest types, so you just have to be mindful of what they are. Then you'll gather your meeples and put them in your discard or the lodging side of your board. Now, your final phase of your turn is the draw phase. First thing you're doing is checking monsters. You need to make sure there's always 6 monsters in play, so you'll draw that many cards. The ones that are out on the board will slide down into the first position. So as you're drawing these monster cards, you might run into a Dark Council card. Dark Council cards will do a couple things. They will allow you to draw an extra meeple on your turn, but also add another corruption to your bag. So after that first Dark Council card comes out, you'll be drawing 5 meeples on your turn. And after the second, then you'll be drawing 6. Again, remembering to add corruption to your bag, but that third Dark Council card will trigger the end of the game, which means you only have a couple more rounds to do all the things you want to get more victory points. But that does allow you then to go after the overlords, which are super powerful, but by that time you hope that you built up your forces to go after them and gain the victory and bonuses that they call for. Now, the thing with those guys is that you can only defeat them once, so you'll place your marker on those cards showing that you've gone after them. But there's 3 of them and the henchmen that you can potentially attack. So then you're drawing the required meeples from your bag and placing them in your tavern ready for your next turn. So that's kind of the flow of the game. Lots of choices to be made and lots of directions to go, especially depending on what buildings or locations are out into the kingdom that have been built for that particular game. And there's even a towers expansion that you can get that go in the 4 corners that can add even more variety and things you can do. So lots of options and lots of decision making going on in this game. And of course, whoever has the most victory points will be the winner and the next Earl Marshal. All right, folks, just a reminder once again, this has been a Dice Tower paid preview and everything you've seen here has been in prototype form. So keep a close eye on the campaign for any changes that still may occur. Now with that said, this game truly has a ton of decision making, and I like how the different locations that come into play can really change up each game. And it is a race. I love that you're building out your bag, trying to get the best heroes, level them up, and take out as many monsters as possible. And you want to make sure that your end goal is to get those monsters. Don't build up your bag so long that you're neglecting doing that, because that's going to gain you victory points, and keeping an eye on your quests also. And then finally going after the Dark Council at the end. Super thematic and really fun to how you're gaining more power to go after monsters. But folks, ultimately, if this looks like something that would be of interest to you, I'm sure they'd appreciate your support. So I think that's it from me, and until next time, we'll see you at the table.